So you have a unique point of view on your experience. I mean, we've had near-death experiences, we've had other out-of-body experiences, but you had a pre-birth experience. And can you explain to the audience what is a pre-birth experience?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So first, let me just say that, okay, first of all, I have to disclaim that there is no language to describe any of this. We're going to do our best. We're going to do our best, but the language of Earth is based on our local world and its assumptions, and our true nature transcends those assumptions. I'll try to make comments, but I just have to disclaim that language vastly falls short. It's like as soon as we open our mouths, we're just inaccurate, you know?
Got it.
So yeah, my body is 42 years old right now. Up until about the age of 5 or 6, I had some pre-birth memory. I remember choosing this life and coming to Earth. That memory left me completely between the ages of 6 and 30.
Before you continue, what was it like being a 4, 5, 6-year-old dealing with this kind of information?
Yeah, it was very natural. It's the most natural thing in the world, actually. I remember being in a diaper and just barely being able to walk and being aware of what I'll share today.
Okay.
I mean, I knew we're not really from here. You know, we're just coming to experience this place and have this human experience, and nobody else really talked about it. I didn't talk about it. It's just, I thought everybody knew. So at the age of,
at 6, you lost the memory. Do you remember losing this memory?
No. It's just kind of the more I became associated with the human character, the more deeply I became associated with form, you know, with the story, with the objects, with the identity, you know, the more distant it became until it was gone. And then I didn't remember it at all. You know, I didn't even remember that I had remembered, you know, up until the age of 30, when I took up a long-term meditation practice. And well, first I began to have non-physical experiences after a few months of out-of-body experiences, very eye-opening, very worldview altering. And at the same time, I began to have this, you know, pre-birth memory return. And it was not strange. It was the most natural thing in the world. You know what I mean? Like it was not strange, but it was so real, so much even more real than what I experience day to day. I'm very passionate about who we really are, you know, what this human experience really is. And it's very exciting to me to share that, because the actual truth, like the real concrete truth of the spiritual context in which we exist, is wonderful. It's so amazing and full of love and joy and vibrance and freedom. And I'm very passionate about sharing that, because we live in a world that is often less so.
So when you started your meditative practice and you had this kind of awakening, what were the memories that came back to you? Can you talk a little bit about the pre-birth experience?
Okay, so I remember long ago, before I had ever been physical at all, had any physical incarnations, coming across a being who had been physical. And I could feel from this being the quality of his nature, his essence. This is very hard to describe, but in those systems, we share telepathically. Everything's telepathic. We just have a constant sharing of feeling and information and knowing. You know, it's not like here we have to throw clunky words at each other. There, you can actually feel the other being as a part of you, and the environment is part of you. You're connected to all things. And I felt from him this amazing joy and power. And I asked him, my goodness, what could you possibly have done to be this? And do you feel as much joy and power as I feel that you feel? And he shared yes, and he shared with me this huge amount of information and feeling and context. And one of the main things he shared with me is that he had lived a physical life. Well, he had lived many lives, but one in particular that he shared was a time that he had suffered physically from a long-term chronic health condition. And it was very painful. But the way that he chose to meet that experience, it's so hard to describe, the quality of the intention that he brought into that experience allowed a refinement of his being. And it was so beautiful and so full of power. And I said, I want to do that. I want to do that. I'm going to do that. I was just very inspired. And
where do I sign up? Where do I sign up?
Yeah, exactly. And he said, kind of playfully, like, yeah, that's what they all say. Like, you don't know how hard it is. You don't know. You just don't know how difficult it is. And I said, no, I mean it. I want to do this. And he said, well, go talk to your guides. Okay, so, but the majority of the pre-birth memory that I have is of a time somewhat immediately preceding this life, where I had taken a long break after being physical. And I remember this guide coming to me over and over again and asking, every once in a while, are you ready to go back yet? Are you ready to go back yet? And just putting him off and be like, no, I'm not ready yet. No, I'm not ready yet. And finally saying, okay, I'm ready. So then I remember with this guide reviewing what I can only describe as my state, like who I am, who I've been, who I was. It's very hard to articulate this. It's like I don't know how you would describe it, like a graph with this is super crude metaphor of knowing, of experiential evolution that you knew more or less, something like that. And there was this one area that was just blatantly obvious that I needed to work on. I don't want to say need to work on, because we don't have to. It's not about need. We choose to do this. And it was this really deep fear. And it was a fear that had bested me in a previous experience. And in that previous experience, I had turned into something of an egoic monster because of this fear. And I had damaged many other people through the fear. Because fear is at the root of ego. You know, when we act out of ego, it's because there's some fear down there that we haven't processed, something we haven't come to terms with. So this fear was very overwhelming because it was like a very specifically angled vibration. I don't know how to describe this, but a very specific fear vibration. But I said, if it can be done, I'll do it. Like I just knew, because I knew the depth of my being and the depth of what we all are, the unconquerable life that we are. And so then they brought me a physical life that was appropriate for this intention of meeting this fear. And it wasn't this lifetime, it was one just before this. And I reviewed that life and I accepted that life. And then I remember accepting the veil. Okay, so the veil is just a term, it's just a metaphor, but it means the constraints that go along with being physical and having an incarnative experience. That is the limitation of knowledge, having your memory cut off, and having your connectedness disappear. And it felt to me like the best way I can describe this is the metaphor of like a sound amplifier that produces a pitch. Like you start at a very high vibration, like, and then you turn down the knob, and then when you get to the bottom, you turn it down some more, and then more, and then crank it down some more, and then crank it down some more. That's how it felt in the body of my awareness, to plummet down, lower, into the vibrational place of being physical in the womb. And once I arrived, I was like, I am not doing this. There is no way I'm going to tolerate a lifetime of this. This is so dark. This is such low vibration. I had so much fear immediately that came up. And so I mustered my might, you know, and I smoked the veil. I fought my way out. And I was successful at doing that. But I realized that I had killed the fetus that was to be in my body, and I had ended the life. And I had a life review, just like near-death experiencers describe. Even though I had never physically been born, I was responsible for how I had affected the mother, and not only the mother, but hundreds of other people who were affected by the mother because of my fear. You know, I really need to grow in this way. So I spent some time practicing surrendering to the veil in a place that I can only describe as a veil acceptance simulator. It was like going to a room where they dunk you under the water of a dark pool. And they push you under. This is just a metaphor, but it's kind of close. It's like being pushed underwater in a pool, and then you stay under there and see how long you can like hold your breath, and then you cry uncle and they'll let you out, because it's just a simulator. Whereas in the real veil, you know, you can't cry uncle. You have to let it sink in all the way. So I remember practicing, but I still wanted to do this this intention of meeting this fear. So they brought me this life now as Christian. And I remember reviewing this life in incredible detail.
Real quick, I don't mean to stop.
Yeah.
You said you reviewed this life in detail. Do you mean that you were able to see Christian from beginning to end of what you were going to experience, and how this quote unquote game or play or movie was going to play out and what it would do for you in your growth as a soul?
Yes, but it was not it was like a probability tree.
Right.
And I knew that my choices and the choices of every other player in the game would be influencing each other, and it would nudge certain paths to happen. And there were some that were more likely or less likely. And I knew that it was very likely that I would suffer a trauma in my 20s because of this biology. I knew that this body has biological limitations that other bodies don't. And that trauma would give me the chance to be crushed and to re-experience this fear. I remember reviewing qualities about the life and then making requests. Like, for instance, I remember asking if I could be intelligent again, because I knew that I had been intelligent in the last few lives, and it was a trait that I preferred, and I didn't want to, experience a life without that quality. And they said, yes, you can do that. I remember asking, I don't want to forget everything this time. I want to just can I just have a small, tiny bit of memory? And they said, yes, you can do that, but it will make the journey more difficult. And I knew why. I could feel it was because the contrast here would be even greater. So I accepted. And I remember there having to be a moment to say yes to actually accept the life. I don't remember that moment, but I do remember being in like a waiting area, and then this guide coming to me and then just suddenly grabbing my attention, like, go now, like grabbing me by the shoulders, like, earth time, buddy, like not later, right now. And being like, oh, okay, now. And then like locking into that, and then being in this, how do I describe this? It's like, I've described it like a technician's chamber or like a mechanic's shop that was over the earth. I could see a shaft below me with the earth below, and there were these beings there who were very technical in nature, and they are very, very skilled at matching the veil to the individual, because like the individual soul has so many rich qualities, and the life and the body and the circumstances have their own energetic thing going on, and they like, I don't know, they make everything fit, they make everything jive, they're able to make this organic connection. And I remember then being over this pit and them asking me one last time, are you sure? Are you sure you want to do this? Because I knew once I said yes here, I was strapped in for the ride. It's like getting in a roller coaster, once you strap in, you can't get out till the ride's done. It was a little bit like that. And I remember saying, yeah, I'm ready. And then again, this huge plummet in vibration, down, 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 lower, 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 lower. And having all of my knowing disappear and all my connectedness disappear, and all my memory just not there anymore. And then also simultaneously very, very dense, like the body was like being shoved inside of a tiny tuna can, and simultaneously cold and empty. It's so hard to describe. And this time I just focused on not fighting it, and I surrendered to it. I just surrendered to the veil. So then I was there for a while, and then eventually I said, you know what? I am not doing this. There is no way I'm going to tolerate a lifetime of this. I am not doing it. And my fear began to rise up again. And so once again, I began to summon my might to fight my way out. And as I did that, the most holy moment in my entire human life happened. The great spirit of God, what we call God, it's beyond all language, the great I am of all things, source, came to me and expanded me back out, and I felt all the universe within me. I felt our sun, the sun of earth, churning within me. I felt its life. I felt its consciousness and its bliss, this deep, raging bliss of the sun within me. And God said to me, this is still what you are. You can never not be this. It's the most holy moment for me in this life, because that's what we all are. And it's like the most sensitive personal experience. But after that, I was so relieved. I was like, oh, I didn't lose everything that I am, because I felt like I had lost all that I am. And so I stopped fighting, and I return to being in the body and not fighting, and just to surrender to the simple existence of being in the womb, you know. And the next memory I have is what seemed like a long time later, being born physically. I remember the shock, the cold, the light. I remember having no idea what was going on and just looking up at these beings who were taking care of me, the nurses in the room, and being like, who are these beings? Like, I had no idea what was happening, but it was intense. I was so curious. I remember just being intensely curious. And it's funny because when I mentioned this memory to my father, he said, that's exactly what you look like. He said, you had these wide open eyes for a little baby. You were looking around at everything with such curiosity. I remember that. I remember just being so curious. And I know they say that babies can't see. I don't understand how I remember this, but I do remember seeing the room. And later in my life, I drew the room from my mother, and I said, you were here. Here was the bed. Here was the heating grate. Here was the window. The doctor was standing here. And, you know, she confirmed that that was how the room was laid out. But anyway, so after that, I don't have memory for quite a while, you know, until I was older. But I used to have assumptions about this life that I thought would apply because of the time I had been in the higher realities, because I assumed qualities of our true nature that were true there would apply here. I remember assuming that anyone in a position of leadership or authority would be loving and wise. And that's not always the case on Earth. You know, especially the higher up. I figured the higher up you were in society, you must be even more loving and wise, because in higher systems, love and wisdom is the power. That's not always the case on Earth.
Not so much, my friend. Not so much if we look at our world today. No, it doesn't. Your story is fascinating, man. It really, really is. I've read somewhere that you were working in the nuclear industry somewhere, and were you spiritual at this point?
Yeah, I think I've always been spiritual, but for the majority of my adult life, early adult life at least, it was through a Lutheran Christian context. Mm-hmm. And you know, part of my awakening process was a deconstruction of up what until that point had been, you know, my religious beliefs. I had to be humble enough to recognize that I had certain key ideas wrong, but I was always seeking, you know, and it was that seeking that led me initially to the work of the physicist and consciousness explorer, Tom Campbell. And it was one sentence he said in one of his videos, actually, that sent me down this whole path. The biggest thing he said was, go meditate, go find out for yourself, go see what you are, what your awareness is beneath thoughts. Go investigate very objectively what your awareness is. And I love that advice. I feel like I found so much through that. There are so many answers that are available to us through our true nature, you know, beneath the human thinking that seems to be so important to us every day.
So when you started to get these memories back, how did you handle the rush of knowledge and understanding? Because as we get older, we become more. We're not as malleable in our thought patterns. It's a little bit harder.
I understand why you're asking that, but actually, I think in my case, it was a state of awareness that changed first, and then the memories were then natural. You know, as I grew more and more in awareness of what I really am, which is my awareness itself, consciousness itself, and less associated with the thinking and those firm identity thoughts that seem to make us up. That was first. And then once that was where I was, larger aspects of myself began to rise up all on their own. So for me, it actually was not shocking. It was the more normal thing. Yeah.
And when did you decide to come out of the closet, as they say, with this information? Because like you said, it clears a room.
Yeah, it does clear a room. No, I think about 4.5 years ago or so, I decided to share. I felt intuitively nudged to do it. It's a very personal story, you know, and it's like, I'm a normal guy. I don't consider myself special in any way. And I live a normal, you know, relatively normal American human life. So sharing did take some courage, especially because in my case, my wife's parents are very conservative, and it did cause quite a social difficulty, you know, for us. But on the other hand, what are we afraid of?
Right.
You know, our true nature is what it is. I couldn't not share. In fact, when it first came back to me, I remember, this sounds so silly to me now, but I remember saying to my wife, I'm going to create flyers and I'm going to go and put them in people's mailboxes. And I want to tell people you are a multidimensional being having a human experience and there's nothing to fear. And she's like, if you do that, you're going to be that guy. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to be that guy. So I didn't do that because that would make me that guy. And, you know, that's not the way to reach people, I guess. But I was very excited is what I'm saying. Like when I realized this, like when I had out of body experiences, I mean, it's so eye-opening. You just want to go up to people and say, you don't need to be afraid. You are a multidimensional being having a human experience. This whole thing is like a play that we've created for fun and for expansion and for creativity. There's nothing ultimately to fear. And because when we know that, when we know who we really are, man, we can live lives of joy and we can shine that joy to each other. We can be free here on earth. We can actualize our true loving nature in the earth context. That's what it's all about. You know, it's not all about moving objects and buying the things and making the big empires. No, it's the acts of love. It's the quality of intention that we bring into even the smallest moments, you know, like even how we pet a dog or smile at someone in the store or whatever. That's what matters. The context itself is kind of like a big illusion, but we, our spirit, our consciousness, we are this, like the substance of what really is. It transcends the physical. It operates through any reality system that we engage. So if we can evolve the quality of our intention towards love and past fear, that is lasting growth. That's lasting power and expansion that remains with us far past the end of these extreme limitations of this earthly experience.
So it's very much like, and I've said this on the show before, it's very much like playing a video game where the higher self, the soul, is the player, and then we are Zelda. He needs experience points in order to defeat the next
Yes.
level, and it's not going to be easy, and we don't want to go do that, but he's going to probably die a couple of times beating up these ogres because he needs the experience levels. This is, you know, it's work we got to do. This is, you know, but I'm assuming for Zelda, it's terrifying.
So yeah, no, so so I want to just make a comment here because so I understand that from the human perspective, it feels like we're just Zelda. And then there must be some higher soul we're a part of that's making these big old decisions. And here we are just stuck in the rat race. You know?
to a certain extent. I mean,
So I just want
there's a connection still.
Oh, there's more. Yeah. So it's more than just a connection. This is important. The higher self is you.
Right.
Like the you that feels like you to you, the you that's making the decisions, the you that lifts your hand is
That's
your
you.
Higher self. It's you.
Right.
That's the same you that's going to be here after the body is gone. So sometimes we want to play Zelda without a sword. You know, if we beat the game.
I remember at a certain point, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to play this like one eye open because I knew the game so well that I needed to challenge myself constantly.
Exactly.
So it's in a very, very similar way what we're doing.
And that's how it is with Earth. So here we are, maybe with a broken body.
Yeah.
Or maybe with a circumstance where you were not given the love, the nurturing. Or maybe you have some context in your society that is very challenging. Maybe it's a war-torn context. You could say not everybody wants to climb Mount Everest. But there are those who go climb Mount Everest. And it is an incredible opportunity. It's not some, you know, masochistic exercise. It is a gift. Being human is like being given a winning lottery ticket. And now that you're here, you get to decide what to do. It's amazing.
So then let me ask you that question. How are souls chosen? I'm assuming there are a limited amount of souls, though they keep growing. I mean, our population keeps growing.
Well, there's a limited amount of avatars. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a limited amount of Zeldas out there that we can play this game with. So how are souls chosen for this experience?
Yeah. So what I do remember, I mean, I certainly can't speak to the full depth of that question.
Sure.
But I can say at least two things. First of all, the soul has to be interested because we're totally free-willed beings. Like, I mean, it sounds silly, but there are many beings who are not going to decide to like come to this level of separation. Like, this is like going into outer space. You know, not everybody wants to go into outer space. Why would you want to do that? That's crazy. Why would I want to feel this separate from everybody else?
Like, some guys and gals are like, I want to be first in line.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
And the rest of us,
Yeah.
I'm like, no, I don't need that experience.
No, thank you.
I don't need to skydive. I'm solid. Like, in my life experience right now, but others, I need to do it every day. So it's just different perspectives.
You got it. No, you got it. And it's very much like that when it comes to physical incarnation. It's like skydiving.
Right.
Okay, so the first thing is they have to want to skydive.
Mm-hmm.
And the second thing is there has to be a level of proficiency. And what I mean is we have lots of experience as souls. It's not just the physical. It's not like there's physical and then one other reality and that's it. There are countless reality systems, many with rules that are very, very different from our Earth experience and for different purposes. And so in order to play a human, you have to have a certain level of, the language is very lacking here, but soul proficiency. You know, you need to be ready, so to speak, to engage a context that's this rigorous. You know, it's not just that there's physical and that's your only option. There are many other reality systems and states of being available.
But this is the densest.
Yes.
This is a concept I'd love to hear your thoughts, and I've heard others speak about this, of the kind of like dealing a deck of cards, where you as the higher self, the soul, is the dealer, if you will, and each card is a life, and you could have multiple lifetimes at the same time, but all still connected to the player in the game. So I'm assuming that beings can do multiple things at the same time, be at multiple places at the same time. So what are your thoughts of us being able to experience multiple lifetimes at the same time?
Yes. Yeah. So all linear time is a creation. It's not fundamental.
Right.
It's a way of experiencing. We tend to think of linear time as like a fundamental, you know, part of reality.
Right.
But actually, what's happening is not the physical universe. What's happening is your experience of the physical universe, and that experience takes place in sequence. Okay, but to the higher self transcends that linear time sequence. And so from our perspective, we could say that all is happening in one now. Now, this language is very limiting and saying, what do you mean everything's happening all at once? From the soul vantage point, I can at least say there's like higher time and there is sequence that takes place, but it's all within the one now. That's the only way I can probably speak to that.
Mm-hmm. So it's possible. In other words, there's a possibility of it.
Yeah. In our metaphor of playing a video game, you can play more than one video game at once. There's no reason you can't play Zelda and Contra at the same time.
Right, exactly. Though it'd be challenging for us.
For us, it would be challenging. But for the higher self, it's not challenging. Like in my pre-birth experience, when I reviewed all the possibilities of this life, I reviewed millions and millions of possibilities in seconds. You know, it was not hard. The bandwidth is ridiculously wide.
It's infinite. It's infinite almost.
It's almost infinite. You know, I don't know how to put words on it. It's huge. So that's what the soul, you know, is working with. It's not like this. You could think of the human as like a subset of the soul, and this subset is bound into linear time, but the soul isn't. Right.
What is your understanding of soul groups?
Yeah. So I'm aware that soul groups exist, and that they perform similar work. You could say, like as souls, we have certain qualities or capabilities that are unique to us. Like each one of us is like a vibrational universe, and that vibrational universe has many colors and sounds and qualities and aspects. It's very hard to describe. So I feel that souls that are of a similar bend or intention work together and congregate, because in higher systems, geography is vibrational. It's not physical. Physical geography may occur in reality systems, but we tend to relate to those that we are vibrationally resonant with. Earth is the place where you can shove two people in a room and they don't resonate, and now you get to be stuck with them.
Oh yes. Oh yes, my friend.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Yes.
That can happen.
I've had that happen a couple times in my life.
I'm
Just
sure.
a couple.
I'm sure. We all have experienced that. But in higher systems, like, I'll just give a very brief example. One time I was out of body and I was doing something, and then this woman came to me who I know physically in my city. Her and I were in a mediumship circle together. And she got my attention. She's like, "Hey, it's Mary," and we're telepathically exchanging. She's like, "We're going to go to this other place." And I was like, "No, I'm going over here. I'll see you later." And I just zoomed off and did my thing at this. I won't try to describe it. It was an energetic work that I was going to do. So there was no like pretense. There's no social pretense. It's like, no, I'm doing this. But 2 weeks later, when I saw her in person, when she opened her front door to me on Earth, she said, "You blew me off." I couldn't believe she remembered it. I was like, I did. I can't believe you remember that. I did blow you off. I'm sorry. Like, from the human standpoint, you have to say you're sorry. But from the energetic standpoint, it's okay. Everybody is exactly who they are. You're who you are. I'm who I am. And so that vibrational, like, you follow your intention where it wishes to go. You don't like sit there and make yourself, you don't force proximity like you might do because of social convention on Earth.
Fair enough. Now, this is a question I get asked all the time because, if on the show, we've talked about reincarnation, about past lives, about near-death experiences, things like that. People always have this one question, like, why do we forget? Why is it necessary for us not to remember these quote unquote past lives? I always say, you can barely deal with the life you have. Can you imagine having the memory of like 4 or 5 other lives where there's trauma and there's pain and there's suffering? How do you think psychologically you could deal with it? But I'd love to hear your point of view on it.
Yeah, no, exactly. So first of all, the forgetting is additive for a few reasons. If you want to fully experience being the human, you got to be the human, man. If you want to be Zelda, you got to be Zelda. You can't be Contra. Contra's not in Zelda. There's no Contra in Zelda. So if you want to be the human in your story, then you need to surrender and let go of everything else to be fully immersed in your human perspective. That full immersion is precisely where the value is. So it actually adds perspective value when you can forget everything else and only have the perspective of being Alex or whoever. So we do have qualities that we carry from life to life because we are the same soul from given life to life. But a given lifetime might develop certain attachments, form associations, and ego patterns. And so it can be helpful to let that go. And like the root fear, if it's unaddressed, could remain from one experience to another. But let's say in one life you really strongly associate with some conservative religious affiliation, and let's say you're a terrorist or something. If you live another life, that whole association is not even there anymore. It's gone. Like, you have no memory of that. Now you're still you, but now you get a fresh slate. Now you get to start completely over. You have to learn everything over again. All the language, all the patterns of life, everything your parents teach you, everything has to be relearned. But it's like starting a brand new game, so that you can just play that game, and that is what playing that game is about. Third reason is that being veiled protects us from homesickness, because the depth of joy and love and freedom that we really are is, oh my gosh, it's breathtakingly deep and vast and huge. And to have recollection of that can be debilitating. Like, how are you going to get up and go to work in the morning if you knew, for instance, that the sun was in you right now? You could feel it. Like, I say that because in my pre-birth experience, I felt that. I knew the sun was in me. The sun is I'm a part of it. I'm a part of the sun. It sounds wild from the human point of view, but from there I could feel it. I just consciously feel it in my body. So in that sense, the veil is enabling. And then what's important is, like, if you imagine the veil like locking someone into a position, and then you work within that position and you refine, and then when you let the veil off, now you expand back out because you did all this work at a limited place. Like, maybe if you wore a 100-pound coat, you put the coat on, now you got to walk around for a whole lifetime, this 100-pound coat. You learn how to walk with 100 pounds on you. And then when you take it off, the 100 pounds aren't native to me, but you retain the ability to walk that you developed. You retain the strength. Yeah, the strength. Yeah.
With the concept of past lives, and that we do this again and again until we work on things, what is karma, and what does the idea of karma play into this? Because a lot of people think karma is like, you hurt somebody, now you have to, it's a punishment, you have to deal with it in another life. From my understanding, from talking to different people, it's a choice to work it out. Like if I harmed you in this life, Christian, and I do my life review, I'm like, man, that's something I got to really work on. You want to add that extra level of difficulty in the game the next time around, so you can work through that, so you can continue your evolution. So it's a true choice as opposed to a punishment. Is that how you see it as well?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's absolutely a choice. So karma is what we could just say cause and effect. Basically, you are who you are. If you are a person who's relied on fear and ego and hurt others, then that's who you are. And so then when you get to the other side and you see the effect you had on others, it's not that there's this like judgment, like, oh, you hurt this person next to you. No, you see who you are. Like you see very clearly, oh, I hurt that person because I have fear, you see, or because I have not yet integrated the certain kind of experience. You see who you are. And so then out of it's your own choice to say, I'd really like to integrate that and grow through that because I see the benefit of doing that. And it's with you. There's like this energetic, because you are who you are remains with you until you deal with it. So you might say, okay, so how we just were talking about how everything is happening in the one now. Okay. So let's say that you had an experience when you were 4 years old and you locked it away because it was so painful. Maybe you were sexually abused. Maybe you were beaten. Maybe it was just something simple like somebody called you a name and you you really latched onto that and lost your sense of self-worth, whatever it is. The fear, that is the rejected, the willingness to reject a certain feeling and not process it, is still there. If you allow in this moment that to arise and you feel it now, at whatever age, 27, 38, 91, doesn't matter, then you are meeting the same energy in the one now. Even if it was something that seemed to have been too difficult or too big. This fear is too big. This trauma is too big. I can't possibly look at that. There's no way. It's going to destroy me if I look at it. That's how it feels. That's how it felt with my fear, my trauma that I experienced in China. I had post-traumatic stress. It was so deep. It was so terrible. I couldn't even look at it. I had disassociated from myself even to escape this fear that was so big it felt like it would destroy me. Our fear will not destroy us. We are bigger. We are deeper. The consciousness is deeper than the deepest fear, but we need to be willing to allow it and feel it in this moment. And when we do it in this moment, you see, that heals through all the moments. So you don't go into it because you're trying to get rid of it. You allow and accept it and fully feel it to heal it, feel it to process it. And when you do that, now you've done that within all the nows, you see, including the other lives that you may be living. That moment, that very moment when you decide how you meet a difficult vibration is the key. It's very empowering. We tend to get overwhelmed by, oh man, I have all these years of sludge. How do I deal with all that? You just meet this moment. This moment has the power.
That's a very powerful idea. I have to ask you this though, because this is something that I get all the time as well. When you say, oh, you hurt somebody in this life, well, people will always bring up, well, how about Genghis Khan? He murdered 6 million, 10 million people, or, in war, or in, that mass killers. Can you explain to everybody how you process as a soul that you were Genghis Khan?
Okay, so So first of all, when you process from the other side, you see exactly who you are. Mm-hmm. And even there, wisdom is not automatic. You still have to decide what you're going to do with it. If you caused huge amounts of damage, then that's the person that you were. You then we'll decide what to do with that. I think it's very important in the meantime to not draw a huge distinction between levels of fear. And I know that levels of scope, consequence, earthly consequence may vary significantly, but there is not a very significant difference between my fear, your fear, or the fear in Adolf Hitler who led to his ego that killed millions of people. I know the scope may be extremely different, but fear is fear. We need to meet our own fear. We're very quick to look at everybody else now, the external world, and to judge, and to quickly turn a blind eye to our own weakness, our own fear. That's what the ego does. Don't look at that. Don't look at what your own issues are. That's too hard. It's easier to look out here and regain some power by judging or whatever else. But we're here to meet our own fear and to grow in love in our own way, even if it's very small. When we do that, even with a fear that may not have a huge scope on the outside, we are helping the collective consciousness of humanity to heal. We're giving permission to everybody else in the pond to meet their fear. And that can very much heal the world, not only externally, but in each of us, which is where it starts. Consciousness is first.
All right.
We are loving beings. We're beings of love. That's what we are. Now, are we unconditionally loved? Even if we kill 1 million people, we are. I'm not saying it's okay to kill 1 million people. We should absolutely. That is not the way of love. It's not what we're called to do. But the true justice. See, we want justice. The ego says there must be justice. Show me the justice. The true justice is that even Hitler is loved. It makes me emotional because we live in a world where so many people are hurt, and we just want to evoke vengeance on each other. I just watched a near-death experiencer on your channel. I'm sorry, I forget her name. She had been raped, and she decided by her intuitive guidance to not press charges. It was her decision against the person, and he found her later in life and said it ate him alive, and he ended up becoming a police officer and helping many other people to prevent that kind of a circumstance. I cried when I heard that, because she tried to make the loving decision even though she was the victim, and our world just hurts for even the perpetrators to be loved. Love is the answer. That is the ultimate healing power, and when we get to the other side, we know it. Imagine how you feel if you hurt 1,000 people and you're still loved. Imagine that.
Right, and it's a difficult minefield we're talking about, because we're talking about two very different perspectives: the spiritual perspective versus the physical perspective. And I know people listening to this might have difficulties hearing things like this, but I understand your point of view. I understand your point of view 100%. Look, Jesus said it, Buddha said it. I mean, there's so many spiritual masters who've said, with you with the first, who has not sinned, throw the first stone. We all go through things, some more extreme than others.
Yeah, but let me just make one quick comment to that. So love is love. Love is unconditional love. If there's a message that is less than that, it's not the ultimate truth. But meanwhile, unconditional love is also very wise. And the system of karma that exists is built within that wisdom. There's not one thought, there's not one action that doesn't have its I don't want to use the word justice, but it's balance.
Balance is
we are fully responsible for every single thing we have done, everything. I'm just saying that system of true balance takes place within and is fully transcended by unconditional love and unfathomable wisdom.
And what is the ultimate purpose of life?
Love. Love is the ultimate purpose of life, and it means so many things. Like, we tend to think love means, the romantic love, or the puppy dog love, or the parental love. Real life love with a capital L, love with a capital L, and all the things it can mean: living in joy and freedom, and just doing it how we can, even here in this cold, airless Mount Everest.